Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and this is the Leather Element. If you've got a good question for us or a good idea for a Leather Element, drop it in the comment box below. Now this week, we talk about adding dye, stain antique to add color to leather. But if you're anything like I am, sometimes I feel a little bit restricted. Love the Pro Dye. It's the only dye I use, but I've only got 10 colors there. Now I can mix, but without a white, non-existent, right? Without a white, there's a lot of colors I can't get to. So therefore, we're going to look at some ways to add color to leather that we may not really think about. Funny thing is, some of these we probably already have in our house. So let's step over here and look at 7, technically 8 ways to add color to natural veg tan leather. Now, if you're new to leather, let's just go over a couple of quick basics here. Now, I mentioned the Pro Dye. It's the only dye I use, and I absolutely love it. All kinds of dyes out there. But here's our standard leather dye, old school. The difference here is this. This is a powder-based dye stuff. This is an oil-based dye stuff. Alcohol carrier in each. But the thing is, with our standard dye, first off, it tends to leave a little powder on the surface of the project. Don't want that. That could lead to rub-off. But secondly, this will tend to go a little bit dark on my colors. And lastly, it makes my leather a little bit stiff. I don't want any of those. So with the Pro Dye, what I can do is dip dye. I'm not worried about my colors going dark. I'm not worried about the rub off, the powder, and I'm not worried about my project being stiff. But what I mean by dip dyeing is I can take a small tub, larger tub, whatever will fit my project. I can pour my dye in my tub, run my project through, set it aside, and it is perfect every time. Look at the consistency there. That's what I'm looking for. Now, a couple of ways we can add our dye. First off, dip dyeing, favorite. But also, we can go with daubers for smaller projects or a dressing sponge. Now, I love this because one of the keys to getting a consistent dye is getting full coverage across the entire project in the first pass. Then I can come back across with another, maybe a third pass, but I'm not worried about the Pro Dye. It's not going to get darker on me. So therefore, sponge, great way to go. And lastly, this is very cool too. I can paint dye in with a simple paintbrush. In fact, that's what I've done here. Now, I've dyed my main body, got a little wrap around, not happy about that, but I dye my main body in a light brown, and I'll come back with my brush, dip that in my dye, and simply paint my dye on around my design. Very crisp and clean, very easy to do. All right, so dye. Easy way to go. These mix well. Our colors, gorgeous. Greens, reds, blues, yellows, and brown. And in fact, one more point while it's here. This is one of my favorite colors. This is a mix, 1-to-1, mahogany and walnut. In fact, there's our straight walnut. Love that too. So the Pro Dye, great way to go. Actually, almost infallible for a clean, consistent color. All right, let's step over to my next favorite. And that is an antique, and I use this just about everywhere. All right, primary job of an antique is to sink into the natural blemishes and range marks on our leather, making it look used and loved. Added benefit, when we tool or stamp, or even just add in a simple groove line, our antique's gonna sink down in those impressions, really make them stand out. Is that not beautiful? That's our standard walnut with a medium brown antique. All right, application, super easy. I can add this with a dauber, rub off with a cotton rag, and it's going to be beautiful every time. All right, next step. It's going to darken a little bit overall. So with this, what we've done here is I've used my red, straight Pro Dye red, and then I've come in with a black antique. Rub that on, buff it off, and notice it's going to stick down in my border line, my groove line, and in between every scale. Is that not cool? All right, we're not done with cool yet, because there's one more step here. We have what's called a neutral antique. So we can take any one of our gorgeous Angelus paints, and we've got some beautiful colors here. We can mix these together. So therefore, we get beautiful antique colors, red, yellow, green. There's a purple, blue, one of my favorites. Now, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up, but I've tooled my knot, and then I've dropped in my purple dye or my purple paint with my neutral antique. Look at that. just a patina of purple. Is that not gorgeous? All right, next up, stains and highlights. Now, with both of these, I typically don't use a lot of stains and highlights. Don't let that turn you off. But what a stain is, or a highlight, it's going to give us a little bit of a wash of color. Think of a watered down dye. But what this will do, it's going to allow the natural look of the leather to come through. A little bit less dye, a little more leather. That's what we're looking for. All right, now I'm going to move this out of the way because here comes one that's a little bit out of the box. In fact, the next few we're going to talk about, out of the box, yes, but a little bit more on the creative or artistic side. But you'll see where I'm going with this one. Sharpies. Love them. We all have some of these in our home. But the two biggest points here. First off, if I'm trying to paint in, I'm not as comfortable with a paintbrush as I am with a pen or pencil. We've been using these our entire life. We're comfortable with them. But also, dye is going to wick on us. So therefore, it's going to be tough to get really clean, straight lines. But what we can do with a Sharpie, in fact, multiple manufacturers, and what I tend to do is look for the Sharpie both with a wide point and a thin point or a fine point, is because now, and we've got some beautiful French curves, but also we can get to any craft store and buy all manner of templates. Drop that in, use our Sharpie, and we get very crisp, very clean lines. In fact, the black sits in there just like a dye. So again, comfort and outcome being our point with a Sharpie. Now, dye pens. These are cool, both for the craft end, simple crafts, all the way up to highly artistic. Now, with these are dye. On one end, I've got this nice big tip. Very cool, very much like a paintbrush. But on the other end, back to my favorite. We've got a nice fine point on that. So what I can do on the simple end, the craft end, I can sign my name, put in my initials, write in all kinds of cool little remarks or maybe sayings or whatnot. But at the same time, we sell 24 colors. Look at some of these beautiful colors. Now, I've just started working with these, starting to love them. Got a couple of boo-boos here where I've painted outside the line, but is that not beautiful? Look at now our ability to add multiple colors. These are very cool. Don't have a lot of samples yet, just starting to work with them, but immediately I'm starting to love these. Over to the acrylic paints. We have got some gorgeous acrylics. In fact, the purple, the orange, we've got sparkles, we've got metallics, and in fact, when we start mixing these, no end to the possibilities. But right here, I get a lot of comments on the game bird feathers. Folks will walk over, pick it up and say, you know what, I thought that was real. Well, no, it's just acrylic paint on some chrome tan scraps. But are those not cool? All right, let's step that up a little bit. So we've done a video on the mask, the fox. What I've done here is I've dyed the entire piece in our light brown pro dye. Then I've come back in with our acrylic. And you know what? There's our Sharpie again. Does that not look good? Look how clean and straight my lines are. I'm comfortable with a Sharpie. But the acrylics, so many ways we can go with these, particularly once we start mixing. All right, last one. This one, not perfect, but it's kind of cool. Now, imperfect at best, but there are some cool techniques. I'm not even going to go into all of them here. Let's keep it simple. But spray paint offers us some cool ways to go about adding color. Now, with this, we did a video on the bolt. Beautiful fall leaf. So what I've done is just added a hint of yellow across the bottom and a hint of black across the tips. Super easy to do, and does that not look great? All right, I said 7, technically 8, because the last one, ink pen. And no kidding, the cheaper the better. What I've done for the veins in the leaf, I've scribed my line in, and then my pen will simply sit in that line, makes a super nice detail. How cool is that? Again, all kinds of ways we can go with our spray paint, but let's keep it simple now by simply adding a bit of a fade and a little bit extra color. No limit to the possibilities. No longer are we restricted to our 10 basic dye colors. There are so many possibilities, and we've just scratched the surface. So I hope you take any one of these options, absolutely run with it. There's no telling where you're going to come out. I hope this is good information for you. Thanks for taking time to watch The Leather Element. Good luck with your projects.